you are, and I'm going to adjust my circumstances to manage my needs, is what happened.
Ooh, I like that. So why don't we just jump right into it? Reintroduce yourself to my audience. Let them know who you are and, of course, where they can find you.
Sure. My name is Tonia. Officially, it's Dr. Tonia Winchester. I've been in practice as a naturopathic doctor since 2007. I'm also a mind body healing coach, and I help people to heal and release pain from the past so that they can be present, kind, connected, and really do what it is they want to do in this short lifetime. And people can find me at toniawinchester.com. That's Tonia Winchester.com.
Perfect. So welcome back. Actually, I don't know how this came up, but I was watching a movie and it was actually a horror movie named after Winchester,
Oh, isn't there
like the
that
gun.
supernatural show? Is it, but you watched the movie?
Yes.
Okay.
I watched the movie and I was watching it because as I was preparing for our interview, not that I have to watch horror movies to prep for you. It was just, I don't know why I tied that together, but I was watching a horror movie. And when I saw the last name, I was like, how come I haven't noticed this before? So it was like a small world. It was like, what's that? It was like a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Oh. Yeah,
right?
I guess the name, I mean, the name's also connected to the gun manufacturers. But yes, I've had people, I don't watch that show Supernatural, and I didn't even know that there was a movie for it or of it. But I've had people stop me being like, "Oh my gosh, I love your characters." And I was like, "My characters? Like I have nothing to do with this program whatsoever." But yeah, apparently there's two brothers that the Winchester brothers that go fight demons and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like the seven
Okay.
deadly sins, and
Right.
they're all about that, right? But I say that just because it's like when you buy a new car and you see that car everywhere. It's like I saw the name
Yeah.
Winchester
Winchester.
everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So for you, I know that you mentioned you wrote a new book. So tell us
Yeah.
about the book and how you want it to be received, especially for those who are your target audience.
Hmm. Yes, the book is called Thinking Kindly: 7 Steps to Stop Self-Criticism and Change Negative Thoughts into Positive Ones. It is almost ready to launch out into the world, probably June 1st. I know we're live right now. If people are hearing this recording later, it will probably be out by then. And it is a book about recognizing the places in our lives, inside our minds, I should say, where we are unkind to ourselves and unloving to ourselves, and giving people a really simple step-by-step strategy to change those patterns. I think it's estimated that 80 to 90% of our thoughts that we have every day are repetitive from the days before and the days before that. We are just thinking and acting on autopilot, where we're reactive in our lives, especially in our relationships. This really shows up in our interpersonal, intimate relationships, where our unconscious automatic thinking and reactions will cause us to behave in a certain way that could trigger some kind of big blowout with our loved ones. So, but it all has to start from inside. This healing process has to start with a change of thinking and how our thoughts are inside our own minds. So that's really what the book is about. It's about helping us to think more kindly, thinking kindly, so that we can have really lovely, fulfilling, deep, positive relationships in our lives.
Anytime I watch interviews like online, what you just said reminds me of those interviews because it seems, at least everyone online, they have this issue that they can't make relationships work, right? Like the men are going crazy saying that all she wants me is for my money, and the women are going crazy saying that what money? You're broke, you have nothing. I pay all the bills, right? I am the table, as they would say. But what's interesting to me is I made a decision in my life that I didn't want to have any more arguments,
Mm.
right? And by arguments, I mean that there was a time where I was getting upset. You know when you feel hot inside and you're
Yeah.
like, ah, but you're so mad, right? But I was more controlled. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to give less time and energy to those people that I knew could upset me,
Yeah.
right? And what I found was people that I would be in relationships with or dating with, they would upset me more than the average person. And I didn't understand why. But why do you think that happens?
Yeah. There is, that's a big question, and my brain's going in 15 directions about how I want to answer it. But our stuff is going to come up in those closer relationships. It's easy to kind of keep our own pain bodies and our own personal historical triggers at bay when we're just interacting with strangers, with people that we're just acquaintances with, colleagues with, because there's sort of more of a surface relationship that you're not really getting deep into this place where ultimately we all fear not being loved, but when we're then starting to connect with people more deeply, it's going to uproot and stir up these unconscious fears that we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough, we're not valuable enough, we're not lovable, and there's something at stake, there's something to lose. All of that's just made up in our minds, but it's made up at a time when we're so young that we can't actually decide, no, you know what, that's not actually true. I am good, I am kind, I am lovable, I am worthy. But these old stories, these old tapes just play out. And so that's one piece is there's almost this, there's more at stake, which is why it becomes a problem. The other thing is that in the body of work that guides my mind body coaching and healing with people is this belief that projection equals perception or perception equals projection. And essentially what that means, if I'm being triggered by something outside of myself, it's actually a reflection of something that needs healing within myself. And this is actually kind of comes out of Freud and Jung and looking at shadow work. And shadow isn't bad. It's just what's under the surface of our conscious mind. It's just what's hidden and buried from us. So the idea of it, say I'm interacting with someone and I'm like, God, they're judgmental. And I'm judging them by saying that. I'm being judgmental by judging them as being judgmental. But it's just something for me to look at. Or, gosh, they're a snooty biatch. There's something in my shadow that I need to explore and consider. So those are the two main things that A, there's more at stake in those more intimate relationships, and B, there's something within us that needs to be healed. And our unconscious mind is giving us examples of that in our outside world so that we can integrate that part of ourselves and become whole again.
When you mentioned the negative thoughts turning into positive thoughts, and when you mentioned that there's a lot of stuff beneath the surface, what's maybe something that is blocking from people taking the first step and acknowledging there's something there, and then taking the next step and understanding, okay, what can I do to maybe resolve it, or at least try to make sure that it doesn't hinder them in a way in the future?
Yeah. Part of it has to be about practice. And just because people are so well practiced in those habitual thoughts that are problematic, that they're triggered by or they're triggered into, we need to interrupt the pattern. So the first step is really to notice that you're having these thoughts that aren't helpful, these negative thoughts or unproductive or unkind, and start this process of pattern interruption where you can change the emotional state in your body. That's a really key component of this so that it's more calm and more at ease, because from a more calm at ease place we're able to make better decisions. And we've all had that experience where, if things are really smooth in our life, it feels like we can really kind of manage and cope and strategize. And then when things are haywire and chaotic, it's harder to actually make a good decision. Like, and we might make rash decisions that we regret later, or act out in a certain way that we regret later. So after noticing our thoughts aren't helpful or kind, the next step is to really, and this I'm summarizing in a big way, but really changing our emotional state so that we can have more resourcefulness in the here and now. And then the third phase of the 7-step format and structure is to start to offer new things to think about. And we can't just jump to that stage because there's too much activation in the nervous system. If we're thinking negatively, there's a negative arousal that's happening in the nervous system. That's agitation. It might even feel like anxiety. overthinking, worrying. And we can't just flip that switch by saying, "Oh, I'm calm, I'm kind, I'm good." There needs to be a gentle sort of massaging of of that into a new way of thinking. And that has to be practiced over time. If someone is in their 20s, 30s, 40s, or beyond, they've been practicing those negative thoughts for a long, long time. And you don't go to the gym just one time and get buff, right? You need to go regularly and consistently to start to be able to, have some definition in your body. And it's the same thing here. Things need to be practiced over time.
I wish that you had that answer for me about 3 months ago, and I'll share a story why, Tanya.
Okay.
There was a day, and I hope they're not watching this, that I had three exes message me in the same day, all for whatever it is they wanted. I won't get into this. I'll keep it PG. But one of the answers that I said in my mind, anyways, because I wasn't courageous enough to say it then, but I wish I did, was that, you know what? Why don't they all just show up? I'll grab the mud and just wrestle to the death, right? At least I get a benefit out of it because it was unusual to see some people come back. And one of my friends always has a joke is that they always come back. Right? Like there's always people, I believe, to your point in your life that they come back maybe as a test of the new Tonia, a test of the new terrain, right? Looking at it and you're saying, because you know why this ended and the reason why, and many of us won't go back to that, right? It's like when you're driving your car and you're on the road to peace and happiness. The only time you look back is to make sure that there isn't anyone chasing you or to check your mirrors, right? You don't look back for the luggage, you're focused on the journey ahead. But one thing I had to realize to your point was that maybe there's work that I had to be done because it was kind of arrogant, maybe in a way, to think that it's always that other person, whereas I'm the one picking them. I picked the last three people. Sure, they may look differently, there may be some differences around them, but there has to be a commonality because I'm the only person that's a constant. I'm not working. Is that a difficult conversation for people to have in your experiences? If so, why?
You're speaking to this responsibility that we all have to be in charge of our own experience. And that is hard for a lot of people because, when the buck stops with you, you don't have anyone to blame and you can't point your fingers outside and say, "Yeah, none of this has anything to do with me. It's all your fault." Wouldn't that be so nice just to defer all of that responsibility? And it is also the path to being imprisoned for life when you are willing to stand up and say, "Yeah, I'm going to own my part in this. Yeah, I chose those people and I stuck with those people even when I knew it wasn't great." There's freedom in the ability to say, "Yeah, this part of this is on me. Like, I need to own my part of this." Otherwise, it's just going to keep repeating over and over and over again. Those wounds will never heal if you try to blame anyone outside of yourself. And another thing that I talk about with my clients is this idea of cause and effect, right? There's always some sort of cause that creates an effect, and we have a choice. We may not be aware that we have a choice, but we can either be at cause, where we're taking charge and taking responsibility for our own actions, our own thoughts, our own belief systems, our own wounds, or we can be at effect of those things in other people. So we're at effect of other people's choices. We're at effect of other people's beliefs and behaviors. One is just being like thrown in jail and the key being thrown away, and the other is liberating, but it's harder. It's harder to stand up in your truth and be like, like I made choices I'm not proud of. And when we can do that, though, we learn and we heal and we grow.
It does seem to be easier to blame, like the victim mentality, just to say that it's always Tanya's fault.
Yeah.
right? Like, I didn't get this job because of you. I'm stressed out because of you.
Yeah,
I can't make any other relationships work after you because of you.
that's right.
And it, right? And it does feel like a prison. And I look back at my past relationships. If I wasn't aware enough to understand that I wanted to learn from it, and if I wasn't honest enough, I could easily blame the person that I dated way back in high school if I really wanted to,
Yes.
right? Right? Like I could say that she warped me for all these 15 years later. And if I didn't come in contact with her, I would be the king of Canada or something, right? Why do you think it's easier for us to deflect the blame, especially when it's time after time after time?
Yeah. And I think the word that I used a minute ago is really helpful here. Where people are proud. People don't want to be wrong. People don't want to be at fault of something. And not to say that there's a fault, but people want to be proud of the decisions that they're making. And when they've made decisions that they're not proud of, it's a really hard thing to admit. One of the one of my teachers a few years ago said something that really helped me to put things in perspective that emotions as we experience them as human beings, to have the fullest, richest experience, we need to experience all emotions, and all emotions serve a purpose. Anger, fear, sadness, they all are important when they're appropriate and warranted. And the positive ones, happiness, connection, love, joy, satisfaction, that's all important too. And the landscape of all of these different emotions makes our human experience so rich. But it's not like every day you're going to go through every moment and be 100% happy all the time. That isn't necessarily a goal to strive for. But something that you can strive for is going to bed every night and looking back on your day and saying, did I behave in a way that I'm proud of today? Did I behave in a way that I would be proud to role model for my kids, for the generation after us? Am I proud of the decisions I made today? And when we look at our history and we have decisions that we made that don't help us feel that way, and we probably made them because of our old pain story that was driving those decisions on autopilot unconsciously, it's just easier to point a finger and be like, she made me do it. He made me feel that way. I don't have anything to do with this. But it's harder to say, you know what, I was hurt, and so I behaved like I was hurt. But when we can do that, it frees us up for the most preciously deep and intimate relationships that we can imagine or not even imagine at this point.
I look at myself, who I haven't hit 40 yet. So I'm not midlife, but I'm getting there. I'm getting there, Tonya. I'm getting there. I look at a lot of people who are my age and who are going through exactly what you said, but they're still trying to figure it out. But there seems to be like a difference between men and women, right? Like if a woman is trying to figure out in her late 30s, or sorry, in her late 30s to early 40s, if she wants to have children, the window is so close, right? It's almost closed at this point. Oh, it's going to be, is it geriatric pregnancy? I believe it's the term is called,
Yeah, above age
right?
35 is considered that.
35. Yeah, like very high risk, right? Women, you're still young, ladies, you're still young. It's
Yeah.
just, biology is undefeated, as they would say, like the internet. But one thing that I do look for is if I were to come to you and say, hey, Tony, I'm 35 years old, I'm not married, I would want to be, is there something wrong with me? And the reason why I ask it that way is we tend to self diagnose ourselves. And if we look around, we see a lot of people who are saying that at this age, if you're not going to be married, some people ask, what is wrong with you? Why can't you make a relationship work? And then we would sometimes get reflective and think, okay, maybe something is wrong with me because I have opportunities, but they're not resulting in what I want, right? Like, how would you maybe coach me in that scenario? Like, how would you have that conversation with me to maybe provide me with some answers that I can't, for some reason, obtain myself?
Yeah. Again, lots of ways to answer that question. What's coming to mind in a big way is making sure that the values that you have, the things that you're driven by, that you're wanting, are in line with how you're behaving. And so sometimes for folks, there's this incongruency between what they say they want and how they're acting. So if what they say they want is, to find a long-term partnership that turns into a married relationship, and they're still circling back to this other point, blaming everybody for how they feel inside, those are incongruent things, right? There has to be, a marriage isn't when two people come together and complete each other. A marriage is when two whole people come together, ideally, right? This is the healthiest version of this, and they make each other bigger and better. They're both bringing 100%. But if we're looking outside of ourselves saying, you need to fill up my 50%, you need to fill up my my 60% or whatever it is, we're not we're not going to be attracting the match that's actually going to let us thrive in that relationship because